If you spent any amount of time on the internet or consume popular culture on a regular basis, you may have encountered the African mud hut narrative. It's often utilized as a weapon to insult or denigrate African people or history. Although today, it's seemingly used less often. The mud hut narrative's implication, aside from being a false deduction, truly robs African architecture of its brilliance, ingenuity, and diversity, and hopefully today will bring clarity to the discussion. What up, African world? It's Somseem here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and contributing to this content. The link to Patreon is in the description box below. Also, stay tuned with a word from my sponsors.
Hello, my name is Howard Dorsey. I'm 54 years old. I'm here to talk about my experience with herbal results. I was getting sick, so I went to the doctor. And they told me that my blood pressure was high, my cholesterol was borderline or high, so I was very sick. You know, sometimes I thought I was dying at some point. And I ordered a bottle of olive leaf extract. This is how the bottle comes in. And within the first probably week and a half, 2 weeks, I checked my blood pressure and it was back down to normal. It was like 120/80. My cholesterol went down to 125. You know, I definitely believe that olive leaf extract from Herbal Results saved my life. And that's real. I mean, I recommend it to everyone in my family, my friends, and we've seen a lot of results in that manner as well.
Purchase now at herbalresults.net.
To begin, our focus for this video will primarily be centered around Western and Southern Africa. Also, periodically throughout the video, the phrase mud hut and earthen construction will be interchangeable, so please keep that in mind. The mud hut narrative is a very pernicious one because it not only possesses a negative undertone, but it completely ignores the diversity of African architecture. And that is the false deduction I was referring to earlier. We'll get into the African architectural diversity later, but for now, let's understand the potential origins of this narrative. Scholar LaBelle Presson reveals how this false deduction may have happened. The European image of West African architecture was thus heavily conditioned by observation of only a narrow strip of tropical coastline. From the onset, it would seem that first impressions along the coast contributed foundationally to Europe's early views of African architecture below the Sahara, not deemed salient enough for recognition or praise. This first impression made it challenging to ameliorate later, perhaps contributing to the mud hut narrative. Granted, more evidence is needed to settle on such conclusions. Regardless, Europe's early disinterest for earthen African construction below the Sahara is unassailable. If we took the time to go beyond early ideas about African architecture, I think we would be able to appreciate its ingenuity. According to the Encyclopedia of African History, traditional African architecture is determined by climatic conditions, natural resources, and the sedentary habits of its people. The earthen construction witnessed by early European observers were perfectly suited for its environment. The circular form, in contrast to the rectangular, helps to concentrate thermal radiation in a central enclosed interior space. Rather than strive for maximum ventilation, the savanna builder will shun window openings and limit the single door opening to the smallest possible dimension, so that the thermal properties offered by the thick earthen walls will be maximized. Not only is earthen construction more suited to the demands of climate, but the drier climate itself permits the use of earthen materials without supporting structural reinforcement. In addition to this ingenuity, we have the needs of nomadic peoples to consider. The way some African populations lived informed their architecture. Earthen construction with circular designs was important for nomadic populations who migrated every few months. Scholar Chancellor Williams brings clarity to this topic. for the kind of houses and community buildings they would erect depended directly on the probability of permanent settlement or sudden flight again. In short, they could build large, sturdy, and attractive compound homes and temples of worship or easily demolished huts. Interestingly enough, those who obstinately uphold the mud hut devaluation of African architecture may be surprised to learn that European colonial settlements along the African coast began mimicking traditional African architectural themes because of its obvious merit. Early British and French colonial settlers and administrators, recognizing the merit of indigenous solutions to climatic comfort, emulated them by raising their expatriate mansions high above the ground and by developing a wall system composed of louvered doors and screened verandas. Many examples can still be seen in Abidjan, Accra, Lagos, and Dakar. Though the mud hut narrative had broad implications, it fell short of recognizing the vast diversity of African architectural forms. Africans had other methods of building structures. Their form and beauty was readily apparent to any foreign observer. For example, the 19th century British historian William Reed told us about the many courtyards, suites of apartments, and rooms of the Ashanti Palace, reminding him of Wardour Roads in London. Scholar Michael Gomez tells us that al-Bakri seemed intrigued by the domed buildings of the Wagadu Empire, known in the literature as Ghana. Archaeologists discovered relatively recently in West Africa a palace hailing from the medieval kingdom of Gao, located in modern-day Mali. 2 layers of white and red plaster are painted inside the walls, meaning that this room must have been very beautifully decorated. This residence contains 2 other rooms, one of which is a bathroom equipped with a drain pipe under a corner of the floor made of pebbles. The mention of drain pipes and pebbled floors is reminiscent of modern amenities. The fact that these features existed in a West African palace ostensibly dated to around the 10th century is remarkable. The structures of Great Zimbabwe left such an impression on European observers that Cecil Rhodes and his followers even called it the Acropolis after ancient Greece. Given this historical perspective, the mud hut narrative is left in a state of intellectual necrosis. Aside from a gross misrepresentation of traditional earthen structures, it seeks to rob Africa of its architectural diversity, beauty, and ingenuity. Hopefully, we can begin to put earthen structures in its cultural and environmental context while simultaneously appreciate the vast diversity of African architecture. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos and want to help in its continued production, consider supporting the home team on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.